I'm going to start by just going through the vision that was presented at the AXUG. So the business problems we're trying to solve is 4. Most importantly, we want to assure that there is business continuity for mission-critical processes. The definition of mission-critical processes as of today is the full operation of a manufacturing plant, the full operation of a distribution center. So it's very a broad definition of what's mission-critical. The second thing we want to solve is make a paved migration from 2009, 2012 to a full cloud solution. So take our customers step by step into the new Microsoft world. That's what I mean by building a bridge for helping customers to move to the cloud. The third problem we want to solve is make use of investments in data centers that customers do have today. And the last thing we may solve, that's why it has an asterisk at the end, because there's lots of initiatives around it, is a data residency in certain markets. So this is not, the data residency is not concerned only of this project. There is projects all over the Dynamics organization that are seriously looking into this. So what is the idea behind a hybrid deployment of a Dynamics 365 operation? So if you think of a canonical business layout of a typical AX Dynamics 365 operation client, customer, they would have manufacturing sites in different geographies. It's the red drawings. And then they would have distribution centers in other regions. And then they would have sales subsidiaries all over the place. And traditionally, all this would be hosted in one instance. In one Dynamics 365 instance that is hosted in a Microsoft data center. So the idea with hybrid deployments is to have part of Dynamics 365 running against a main instance that's in a Microsoft data center, and part of the application running in a data center of choice. For example, having all the manufacturing part of Dynamics 365 running close to the industrial equipment that resides in factories, and so the software is running closer to the actual factory, potentially. So that's basically the idea, splitting the application, and parts of it runs here and parts of it runs in another place. But it's the same application. So what runs where? When we split the application, the current thinking is that we will always have a main instance of Dynamics AX running in a Microsoft data center. And in this main instance, we consolidate the data from all the other, what we call workplaces. And because this is the repository and the superset of all data, that's the best place to manage products, so do master data management, and it's the best place to do financial reporting, and it's the best place to do all the analytics and integrations to Power BI, Cortana Intelligence, and things like these. So that's the main instance, and from the main instance, you can, besides the main instance, you can span out workplaces. And the workplace is a collection of companies, a collection of Dynamics AX companies, legal entities. And if a company has been deployed to a workplace, then it means it's primarily operated in the workplace. So the transactions that are generated in that company originate in the workplace and are uploaded to the main instance. So that's why I started by saying that the definition of what's business critical is very broad, because essentially, besides master data management, so product management, everything that's in a legal entity, everything that's not shared data is maintained primarily in the region, in the workplace. And it gets uploaded to the cloud. Products get maintained in the main instance and get pushed to all the workplaces, hence ensuring that the item numbers, product numbers, and all these numbers are unique across all the workplaces and across all companies. So that's hybrid deployments from a perspective of the application and how it gets split. From the perspective of the code that's run, it has to be the same code in all of these instances. So the main instance and all the workplaces are running on the same code base. Now, the vision is that when you need to do an upgrade, when you need to apply a hotfix, ideally you don't have to take the whole thing down to make the code change. So what I'm saying is that we envision that at some point, one workplace instance, so a group of companies, will be down for maintenance, for upgrade, while the rest will be working. Because we do understand that if you have a global manufacturing company, there is no common times when you can take China and Germany down at the same time. So we need to keep Germany operating while China is doing the code upgrade, and we need to upgrade China while Germany keeps working. To summarize, if you take this as the split of Dynamics AX, so the red part is the global financials, so cross-legal entity functionality, and then also in the red part you should have master data management, and then you have the manufacturing and the warehousing and the retail parts. Currently, all this is running in the Microsoft data centers, right, on our stack. But what we want to do is run only the shared data management and global finance in our data centers on our stack. And then on data centers of your own choice, be it on-premise, be it at another data center provider or what have you, there is where we're going to run local finance and basically anything that is operating in the company or in the set of companies that are deployed in that data center or in that workspace, yeah. And you can have multiple such workplaces containing one or more companies each. So a bit about data synchronization, and I think, Christian, you're going to talk more about it after the break in 5 minutes. So the idea is that we don't want to build any smart proprietary data synchronization based on entities or what have you. We want to rely on SQL Server synchronization. Yeah. So most of the data is going to get moved from the workplace instances running on SQL Server 2016 to the main instance running on SQL Server Azure. And yeah, that's the bulk of the data, and for that we're going to use...
We use transactional replication. So the synchronization works like two ways right now. We have actually a prototype working. So we use transactional replication on the way up, so the data goes up instantaneously. And we use SQL data sync, provided from the SQL team on the way down, which offers us a two-way sync, which we use to solve a little more complex scenarios. So you see in this way we split it with, I want to clarify. So for example, we say, well, data for USMF would be on-prem, or here in this sample, it's like, for example, DMF. If you look at the lower left corner, lower left corner where you have shared data, right? We see like DMF is like on the workplace, and then we see on the other side USMF is on the workplace. So the shared data of those companies right now in our current plan will be written in the cloud, whereas the local data, the company-specific data kind of, which is not shared, will be written on the workplace. So, but there's obviously, as you know, in AX, many edge case scenarios. Like, let's bring, for example, the product creation and product release scenario, and then delete actions with cascading deletes, or other funky things like, for example, the purchase requisition, where we have a shared header, but basically local line concept, right? So to realize these concepts, we have the SQL data sync, which allows us a both-way synchronization. Unfortunately, it has a 5-minute delay, so that's like makes it a little tricky. So we can communicate up instantaneously, but on the way down, or if we have like both-way communications, it's like through the limitation in SQL data sync, it's a little more tricky. But still, so far, we could light up the scenarios like the product release, and so in our tests, it's actually working kind of well. And as soon as you have like a product, or if you have like, for example, a party created, right, you can create against that in your workplace. So only if you really have to create like something entirely new, you go back in the cloud. So it has some functional limitations, and we work around them right now. But that's kind of how it looks like right now.
So the last slide before the break is just a recap of what the hybrid deployment is. So it allows you to run your workplaces, so your manufacturing sites, call centers, distribution centers, on-premise or in a data center of your choice. Something that I actually now realize I forgot to mention is that the idea is that these workplaces are constantly connected to the main instance. In case the internet goes down, then they keep on working. But the current thinking is not that you can, make the connection once and then disconnect and then reconnect.
We think of having like 8 to 16 hour offline capabilities, so like a full workday.
Yeah. So they're always connected within the full workday. Then what the hybrid brings is the capability to scale out. So the users are going to now be connected against the workplaces. So the load on any instance is reduced. So hopefully that's a benefit. Then the solution is centrally managed. The cloud instance is what we call the single source of truth for both master data, and it's a global transaction repository. The main instance, because it has all the data, it's the instance that's used for disaster recovery for all the regional workplaces. The whole solution runs on the single code base. The whole solution is updated following the update path required for Dynamics 365 operations. And it's the main instance, the Microsoft Cloud instance, that's answering any questions cross legal entities. And actually, if you think about it, it's the main instance, that's what we call a system of intelligence, and the regional instances, the workplaces, are the system of record.
So let me walk through the rest of the presentation, and then we just open it up, and then we can talk about what you think. So this is basically like a little bit an architectural model, a very high level of the design. In top left corner, you see the AOS. So we just enabled, as I said yesterday, the trial experience. And on the trial experience, the AOS runs on Service Fabric. And Service Fabric allows us actually to deploy very easily in an automated fashion on-prem. Why do we want to do this? As Roxana mentioned so nicely before, if we deploy on-prem, we basically want to deploy in an automated fashion. So we don't want to come back where you have to run an installer or anything. So our current idea is for preview and for the first few months at least, you'll basically give us like a high availability SQL server, like so basically 2 databases set up in like Hadron high availability system. You give us 2 SSRS nodes, and then you prepare a service fabric cluster, and we basically deploy our packages. From there, everything will run, well, first semi-automatic and then hopefully fully automated at some point. Then we also plan on deploying retail server there and the cloud PaaS. So it'll be basically possible to have warehouse functionality and retail functionality on this on-prem deployment, on this workplace. Sorry. And then, as Roxana mentioned below, this is how we try to light up telemetry. So our telemetry, as if you remember the slides yesterday, we have like on each AOS like a thing called monitoring agent, which is basically pushing the logs up. So we will literally feed in our telemetry pipeline. We can see we feed into multiple databases. One is the Custo database, which is like, if you remember, I've shown this like hot pass, warm pass, cold pass. Custo is basically the warm pass, the 5 minutes. And then you have like the other databases, which is like the MDS, and then basically we scrub the data, and then we get it basically after scrubbed into HD Insights, where we basically run our own reporting from. So we intend to have all this same capabilities. Why are we so eager to do that? Is because even though if we provide something like a hybrid deployment, we want to keep these capabilities of being more proactive. So one of the beauties of being in the cloud is that we can see what's happening to our customers, right? As I said, we don't see any PII, we don't see any names, but we can at least see, hey, many people seem to have problems with this business process, right? So the sales order form is always low. Well, it's not. It's one of the best tuned forms by now, but we know, okay, somehow this tenant always has problems with invoicing. Maybe I can go to our service engineering team and somehow figure out how we can help this customer. So we can be more proactive, and we don't want to lose this capability. Just because we now provide some partial on-prem solution, we just don't want to lose these capabilities of helping proactive. If you ever had a crash in AX, which probably you have if you have been around for a while, and then you remember how it was. Oh, I had to collect a crash dump. I had to upload the crash dump. At some point, some engineer would give me a file share. Then often on the first time you missed providing the crash dump, right? So then you had to install debug dialogues, and you have to wait 2 weeks till the crash happens, and hopefully the guy at Microsoft would figure out what's going on and eventually can provide you a hotfix. And sometimes these things took like months and months and months. Well, now crashes are uploaded by MA automatically into Azure Watson, and we have a team which is like 3 engineers which just do that. They just analyze crashes, right, if they come. So they don't only do that, but because we don't crash so often, remarkably. But if there's a customer which the system is crashing, we actually proactively provide fixes for that instead of waiting for the customer to actually complain. So we don't want to lose these capabilities. We ideally want to keep that, right? Or that's like a lot of value for our customers there. Yeah. So we want to keep the cloud basically as a system of intelligence. So there are a few features which cannot really be easily replaced on-premise. And that is demand forecasting, for example, then the retail upsell feature, future work we plan in Cortana Analytics, with Cortana Analytics. So we want to, essentially, if you read a little bit through our roadmaps, you will see we have been the system of record. That's what an ERP system is in the past, right? But now we want to make ERP systems of intelligence. And doing that step, we also want to keep driving that vision and keep continuing that vision. So any machine learning capability and some of the things like entity store, management reporter, we want to have it running in the cloud, whereas we work on a little bit of replatforming of management reporter, which would technically also allow us to run it on-prem. But that's like work hasn't started, kind of. We just have the plan right now. we're working on early designs. But for now, yeah, things like management reporter, consolidation, machine learning, business intelligence in this sense would be running in the cloud. So one configuration, essentially this whole system would be configured and also enhanced in LCS, meaning that, for example, you would in LCS say, okay, I want to have workspace 1, 2, 3. Workspace 1 holds company A1, A2. Workspace 2 holds company A3, A4. Workspace 3 holds company A5, 6. And then the cloud holds maybe 7, 8, 9. So, and then this whole configuration, basically, you would set up in LCS, and then this would be used to populate a bunch of tables in AX. And based on these tables, we can then configure the data synchronization automatically. So going back to the slides Roxana has shown, you would see like on the lower left and on the lower right, there would be some two workplaces. They would use transactional replication to communicate up, and they would use SQL data sync on the way down. So far, the only way we think of for the workplaces to communicate, for at least till like June, would be with using, you would copy data up via transactional replication, and then on the other side down with SQL data sync. That's the only way. So there would be no direct intra-workspace communication at the first rollout. So, yeah, some facts, maybe fitting to the discussion we might have in a few minutes. Yes, the hybrid deployments are no full on-prem deployments. So this is what it is. And we can also say, yes, there's a need for full on-prem deployments. And believe me, we actually internally fight and work for that. Internally, we discuss how could we actually make a full on-prem deployment happen. So it's not that we don't even want that as an ERP group. So we'll try to get there at some point. But right now, what we have in plan does not cover that. And this is also not what it is. So let's be honest about it. And you can also not like make instant code changes like on one workplace. All the code changes have to go through the cloud. So you will have like a basically sandbox in the cloud, and you will have a sandbox on-prem, and you basically need to test your code. You do your code in your dev system. You need to deploy to both sandboxes. You test them, you validate, because you want some validation of if your code will run on-prem, right, and in the cloud, and then you basically push to the environments. We hope to fulfill these like 24-hour uptime requirements with this approach at some point. So you would, for example, say, okay, I first update my cloud, then I update my workplace 1, I update my workplace 2. Then let's talk a little bit about the roadmap. So the retail store unit that works as is has been working all the while long, right? So if you look at how AX7 shipped, that kind of pretty much shipped already then. So yeah, retail always had like a hybrid mode. And then, so for now, we try to, in the first rollout, come up with an instance for manufacturing specific, because we realize that manufacturing customer have the highest requirement for actually, if there's any like break in internet connection, we want some additional uptime, we want to not have our production to stop, we need to continue for 8 to 16 hours till we kind of get the connection back, right? Then we have the instance for warehousing. So that's what we try to light up next, the whole warehouse and WMS functionality. And then we want you to be able to have, for example, retail running on a workplace, and then you could, for example, this is what's meant with half 2 calendar year 17, where we say you have basically retail running on the workplace and use the workplace as back office. That's what's meant there, basically. So right now, retail would maybe run on the workplace, but the back office would be the cloud, right? And the the whole basically HQ functionality would be in the cloud. Later we want to be able to say, okay, retail runs on Workplace 1 and on Workplace 2, and is using the workplaces as its own HQ. So like little more independent instances. And then later we want to support the full AX suite. So we have no date on that or no internal goal. We just know we want to be able to have a full supported ERP system running on one workplace. So we are not entirely clear if we can make that till end 2017. And with that, let's talk. Correct. The question was, is this only valid for D365 operations? Yes. The whole hybrid cloud concept counts only for D365 operation. I would say CRM actually, so field services, aka field services and service automation and sales, right? If you look at this is basically the old school CRM products. They work on a full cloud-based installation right now. And I personally don't know if they will keep supporting on-prem. Whereas I understand also that for a CRM system, it's probably less critical to have some on-prem capabilities. If you think about CRM and if you think about the, I don't want to be like demeaning, but if I create a sales order in CRM, well, it ends with creating a bunch of lines and maybe have some integration to see if I have stock available and things like that. But if I create a sales order in AX, well, and if I post it, it ends with like a fully posted journal in my GL, right? So it's like a little more complexity there, and on the way to get there, I do tax calculations and all kind of things, right? So I don't do these things I don't do things like that in CRM. So I think CRM, if I understood the roadmap correctly, they want a proper Azure-based cloud. So right now, essentially, they have their own data centers, which hilariously enough, by the way, sit next to the actual Azure data centers. So if you look at a map where all Azure data centers are, there's like one building is like Azure, and then in the same building, there's a few racks, which is CRM, but it's not in the Azure cloud, basically, right?